Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. Well, many in Windsor, Essex are cleaning up today after a wake of vicious thunderstorms. We'll speak live with the mayor of one of the hardest hit areas coming up. Plus, Windsor police have identified the man they say committed murder in the Carol Christou cold case. She was stabbed to death 23 years ago. And India's ban on rice exports is being felt here locally. Restaurants and supermarkets say they're having a hard time holding on to the culinary staple. Well, it's a night many in Windsor, Essex won't forget as a major storm ripped through the county, damaging homes, downing power lines, and toppling trees. Cleanup continues across the county today. The CBC's TJ Deer is joining us from Harrow, one of the hardest hit areas. TJ, quite a scene behind you there. What are you seeing tonight?
Well, Meg, I'm standing at the intersection of Erie and Wellington, and just behind me is a house where a tree literally fell on the roof and damaging the house. As you can see, some of the damage has been repaired to the roof, and the tree has been removed from the roof, but there are still trees on the front lawn, as well as a number of the front lawns around me here. Now, Western University's Northern Tornadoes Project sent a team with a drone to the area this morning. One of the areas they visited was Harrow, and they're here to determine whether a tornado or a downburst hit Harrow yesterday. Essex Mayor Bondi met with town staff earlier this afternoon, and the town issued a statement saying Harrow and Colchester were some of the hardest hit areas in the municipality. Here's some of the cleanup from earlier today. Now, the town describes the damage to some property in those areas as substantial. They're warning people to avoid any unnecessary travel as some roads remain hazardous as cleanup crews work to clear the debris. ELK Energy says their crews and Hydro One crews were working throughout the night to restore power as soon as possible, and ELK says they restored power to most of Harrow just after 2 p.m. this afternoon.
TJ, what are you hearing from people in the area about, the magnitude of the storm?
Well, a lot of people have said that the storm caused a lot of damage. Bondi says yesterday she was out with town crews as well as the OPP to assess all the damage and look at all of that. Here's a bit more of what residents went through yesterday.
It was you couldn't see anything. Like, it felt like you were underwater. Like, you just saw just a whirlwind of water and just debris flying around in circles. Like, the house was starting to shake. We just knew something wasn't right. So we got all the kids and we all went and huddled together in the safest room in the house. And the house was vibrating, shaking. And then we heard a loud bang, which I think was this tree falling on the roof.
It's like this hole above her window right there. You can kind of see everything just caved in. It's kind of scary going in there because there's cracks going all throughout her room. So it looks like it could cave in at any moment. I feel like robbed, It's just too bad. Like, you don't think it's going to happen, and then you get a call, and it's like right through your house.
The weather just blew up something fierce. The sky got dark. I looked out our front window, and this tree over here fell down the road and destroyed a lot of things. So it was like being in a movie. It just fell in slow-mo. And then I just ran to the front of the house and checked the damage, and there's stuff everywhere. Everywhere. Just chaos.
So obviously things have improved since yesterday, but still there's a long way to go. Now, town is saying that residents are responsible for cleaning up the debris on their properties, but they can drop off downed branches or any other yard waste to a municipal depot.
Oh, it's hard just even looking at that house behind you, TJ. I can't imagine how the homeowners are feeling. Thanks so much for that. That's a CBC's TJ Deer in Harrow. And it wasn't just Harrow that has suffered extensive damage last night. The town of Kingsville also reeling with the aftermath of the storm.
Freight train. And that's all you could hear was a big roar. And then when we looked out, everything was down. It was like, wow, what the heck happened?
Yeah. Here's some of the scenes from Kingsville. Massive trees laying on front lawns or worse, on top of homes. Last night, there were lots of people who lost power, including here at a retirement home. A tree went through the roof, displacing 4 residents, and others who need oxygen were sent to a hotel in Leamington while the power was off. Staff says the impacts of yesterday's storm made for a long night.
Since we have no power, we have no fire alarm system, so we have to do 30-minute walks to make sure the building is secure. and just make sure that all the residents are comfortable, not overheating, getting enough water, and having whatever care that they need to be safe.
The damage from that storm so widespread, even the city getting hit last night. A 50-foot tree fell into homes on Church Street after being struck by lightning.
My daughter, she live in here, and then she hear the tree fall down, go to the house, and then she's scared, we're running out. And they called me to come here to see the tree. And then after that, I think my daughter called the city to come to take a look.
Well, there were no injuries reported so far from the tree fall. According to neighbors, the houses were occupied at the time. As for the cost, the home's insurance company says it would not be able to give a quote until the tree is removed. Residents next door say they previously tried to get the city to remove that very tree.
I have another property on McKay, and I know that a lot of residents drafted up something to take to the city to have the trees hacked as a proactive measure from the resident side. And if the city can do that on their part, that would be really helpful.
Well, we're going to head back to Harrow now, where they're undergoing massive cleanup efforts. Joining us now live is the Mayor of Essex, Mayor Bondi. Do we have her there? Mayor Bondi, are you there?
I am here.
She's here. All right, perfect. Mayor Bondi, can you tell us the latest on the cleanup efforts in your part of the county there?
I'm here. We have a lot of work to do to make the municipality clean, but we're well underway. All of the major primary lines of power are restored, so it's just the secondary one-off homes at this point. So got a good start.
Well, that's sounding definitely like better news. Can you describe the magnitude of the storm, though, for, people who are watching in other parts of the county? Just how hard did you get hit last night?
It was something I've never seen before. We have, large trees that were completely uprooted, crops that were laying over. Almost every property in the southern end of our municipality has branches on it, leaves down, fences down, garbage everywhere. Homes have had their roofs impacted, cars are totaled. So it was quite the devastation, but we are really resilient here, and we do come together as a community.
I have to ask you another question here. Is the town considering announcing a state of emergency?
So we talked about it a lot, and we're just waiting to see how it unfolds, because a state of emergency is something that you rarely do, and it's when you do things you don't normally need to do. When you're kind of bending the law, and we really don't need to do that. For all intents and purposes, we have everything under control. Hydro companies have been working around the clock. Public Works, community services, the roads are safe and secure now. So it's just troubleshooting those little pockets now. So we don't feel the need to declare a state of emergency.
Mayor Bondi, just for residents who would like to know, how long do you think the cleanup will take? I know it's probably challenging at this stage to tell, but do you have any estimates on that?
So the challenging part is we are a small municipality, and we don't have the resources to provide the type of cleanup that we did with the ice storm, because we're talking massive tree trunks and branches. Our staff are incredibly busy right now, so it'll really be dependent on residents taking some ownership on their properties for their private trees. If it is determined that it's a town tree and a town tree is down, of course we will come in. We're suggesting that you enter a report a problem so we can get it in the queue and send staff out. But the bulk of this cleanup is going to be the burden of our residents, unfortunately.
Well, we know you're busy, Mayor Bondi, so thanks so much for making time for us tonight, and we're wishing you a very speedy cleanup. Windsor police have released the identity of the man they believe killed a woman back in 2000. Carol Christou was stabbed to death in the bathroom of her Brock Street home 23 years ago. At the time, she was a 55-year-old mother of 2 adult children. This week, Windsor police say Robert Latowski murdered Christou on September 30th, 2000. Latowski died in 2012. Advances in forensic technology allowed police to solve the cold case 3 years ago, but it wasn't until this week did they release the man's name. Windsor police say the two were acquaintances and that he was one of the last people to have seen her alive. The impact of a ban on rice exports from halfway around the world is showing up on local dinner plates. Last week, India, the world's largest rice exporter, announced it would limit shipments to secure its domestic supply and keep prices down. The measure has triggered panic buying, and as the CBC's Jacob Barker reports, it's leaving a hole on restaurant menus and some supermarket shelves.
This is all that's left of the Sona Masuri supply at Nawabi Indian Cuisine on Wyandotte. The 5 bags they have left likely won't last. With the supply that you do have left, how long do you think that'll last here at the restaurant?
7 days hardly.
The rice is a big part of Somya Reddy's diet, and some of her customers, they'll have to take 14 items off the menu.
I don't really feel good about it because it's like banning bread in America. It's gonna affect our individuals a lot, mostly who are from the southern part of India. Their staple food is Sona Masuri rice, which they're banning right now.
Well, normally when you come to Namaste Market, you can find all sorts of rice on these shelves, but right now it's limited to pretty much just one option, basmati rice. That's because India's ban is for all non-basmati rice. Other types of rice are soaring in the country due to heavy rain and drought in rice-producing regions. Images like these from the U.S. began circulating on social media last week following the news of the ban. People who consider the rice a household staple stocking up.
I see rush coming into Namaste Indian supermarket around 12 o'clock and people started lifting 15, 20 bags.
Parimal Parikh says there was a run on rice at his shop as well. He is still expecting shipments of it, but predicts he'll get less and the supply will be more expensive.
We have enough rice in Canada to survive for 4 to 6 months. It's just that people create a panic situation and that gives an advantage to the wholesalers. I try to guide my customers that the rice will be back. It's just don't stock it up because other people then don't get it.
This food economist says the rice ban will affect mostly developing nations and that the overall rice supply in Canada will remain unaffected. But for those that rely on rice for their recipes, how long they'll have to wait remains unknown.
This is not a short-term initiative. You don't sort of ban exports for a week or two. What it'll require is for the Indian production to return to more normal levels.
A wait that's too long for those who consider the rice to be a staple item. Jacob Barker, CBC News, Windsor.
Windsor is known for a lot of things: cars, pizza, shawarma. But how familiar are you with the city's techno scene? Being beside the mecca of techno music in Detroit has definitely had its influence on DJs and producers here. After hearing about meetups with drum machine players and invite-only events, Windsor Morning host Nav Nanwa decided to investigate to find out where the beats are coming from.
Did you know that Windsor, Ontario has an underground techno music scene?
People are still throwing parties, but it's just not like it used to be. So the scene now, I would say, like, it's very underground. It's a small niche of ravers, artists, producers, DJs who kind of all support each other.
In the shadow of what's considered the mecca of techno music, Detroit, Michigan, the Windsor techno scene has actually been around for over 20 years. But it's a scene that's seen its fair share of BPMs.
The peak for me was back when I first started going to parties. That was back in 2000. We had this club called the Underground. It was packed every weekend.
Some of these techno music events happen in secret locations or even in mainstream venues like the one behind me.
A lot of the faces we see are fellow music makers, right? And I think just that kind of support network for being excited about things we're each doing is something that I don't think existed quite the same way in the previous iteration of like the big loud kind of scene.
With more events popping up in and around the city and more people being exposed to the music, it's going to be interesting to see where the Windsor techno scene goes moving forward.
Well, it's a rare sight in the heart of Windsor. An osprey nest has been spotted high atop a cell tower. The large raptors are more common in rural areas outside the city. David DeHaan is a local science teacher who saw the nest while driving through Walkerville.
So the nest is over here on this cell tower, just off of Wyandotte, and you can actually see the branches on the very, very top of the pole. So my wife Nicole and I were coming down Riverside Drive on the way to my father's office And we turned on to Walker here, stopped at the light at Wyandotte, and I noticed hovering over the poles a bird, and I went, Nicole, that looks like an osprey. And the weird thing about it, it's July, it seems a little bit late, but it was also carrying sticks. And I'm like, well, that's nesting behavior. I said, that's really strange, because as far as we know, there haven't been ospreys nesting in Windsor. And we noticed one of them sitting up on the tower right here. And I said to my wife, hey, can you get out your camera and quickly take a picture? And she did. And as we passed the tower, we noticed the second osprey. And when we went home and analyzed the photo that she took, we could actually see both osprey in the picture. So the next day we came back, pulled into the parking lot here, and we could hear one of them calling, but it wasn't coming from the tower behind us, it was coming from the tower over here to the south of us. And that's when we noticed that there was a nest up there. It'd be interesting to find out if there's actually eggs up there. Extremely unique. As far as we know, there isn't a record. I mean, they're nesting in a pole somewhere out, like a cell tower, just like this, outside of Essex. I've seen them over on Fighting Island when I teach over there in the month of May. But this is very unique to be in downtown Windsor, so that's a good sign. And we actually had the osprey hunting over here at Strabane the other day as well. So we've been, my wife and Nicole and I have been coming here on a regular basis to check up on them. We thought during that windy storm that it may have blown the nest off, so we came back the next day and it's still up there. So the fact that there's one living right downtown is extremely exciting. You see Cooper's hawks and red-tailed hawk, and where we live on the East End, bald eagles, there's a nest out there as well. And then on Fighting Island, and there's a bunch of bald eagles nests, but to have an osprey, that's pretty unique.
A nice sunny night out there tonight. That's a live look at the tower cam. What do we have in store for the coming days? Colette Kennedy joins me after the break with more. Well, Colette Kennedy is standing by with the latest weather details. We'll get to her in just a minute here, but first, we got lots of photos from viewers over the past 24 hours. Take a look at some of those here. This is a home on King Street in Harrow. A tree landed on the family home and their van. Luckily, those inside say nobody was injured. The homeowner who sent these to us says they all took shelter in the laundry room. She says 3 mature trees were damaged, including those ones that narrowly missed the dining room window. Now, Colette, I was out in Harrow last night as people were assessing the damage. Just a heartbreaking scene for so many. I know there are lots of residents who believe it was a tornado that ripped through the area, but there are some researchers on the ground right now investigating. Could you tell us what these researchers might be looking for?
Yeah, sure. So the folks from Northern Tornadoes Project, they're out of Western University, sent a crew today, and they were actually going to send some drones to kind of look at the destruction. And the most important thing in terms of what we're looking for when you're trying to decide was it a tornado or a downburst or microburst is not the amount of damage, it is what that damage looks like, so the pattern. And if it tends to be laid out like this, then often that would be a downburst or those microbursts of winds. When you get trees down that kind of cross over each other, and that kind of denotes more of a rotation, then they would look at it more as tornadic activity. So we'll wait for their report to see what they believe occurred there, and then we can kind of get an idea too of the path of things or how strong those winds were from that downburst. Okay, let's take a look first of all at our chart. We know when it starts to get into the 20s for our dew points, it begins to feel oppressive. And guess what? Our dew points are in the 20s, Goderich only in the upper teens. So we do have the very, very sticky conditions. It's not just the temperatures, it's really the humidity we're feeling. So that heat warning's still in place, and some of those humidex values tomorrow likely into the low 40s in terms of how it's going to feel. Our current temperatures, they're not that impressive, not record-setting. The humidex value, mid-30s, approaching the upper 30s. But as I say, we kind of see this peaking tomorrow. The other thing with these kinds of conditions is it can trap some of that low-level ozone near the surface, and we get into the special air quality statement, especially those who in some manner might be compromised. You can have more difficulties breathing. So we have at least the radar is absent of any active weather for tonight. But we look ahead to tomorrow, and I do have to tell you that towards midday, we could see some storms developing. A couple of things going on. A system approaching us from the west. There's also a cold front to the north. Behind that will be the relief from the heat and humidity. But it's this that I'm concerned about because we're going to have so much moisture in the air tomorrow. With that little trigger, we could have some active weather in the afternoon. So I'll be watching that very carefully for us, and I'd like you to be paying attention too. Into Saturday, likely to have some showers too, and cloud cover, and then peeling out of that as we get into the latter part of Saturday, and for the rest of the weekend, things looking a little bit better there. So clear skies overnight tonight. You take your breather. Tomorrow, look at what we're talking about, 32, feeling like 42. We got to get through a couple of days here, and then we really get a breather coming our way.
It seems like we just can't catch a break. Hopefully we do get that nice weather there.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for that, Colette.
Second half of the weekend and onward. Yeah, you got it.
We've been sharing with you stories about people navigating the hot weather conditions. We have another segment of CBC's Urban Heat Project coming up. many of us are finding it steamy this summer, especially on days like today. Across Canada, people say they're really feeling the heat, especially in their homes, and we're tracking it.
The heat, the humidity is sweltering.
Sweltering heat today. There's been a heat warning. Heat warning has been issued by the health unit.
Think summer heat, and maybe it's sizzling pavement and blinding sun that come to mind. But for some, the worst time of day is when the sun goes down, but the heat doesn't.
When your apartment becomes too hot, your body starts to break down. That's not good for people.
Trapped in stifling apartments and houses. No air conditioning and no escape.
Air conditioning should be right for everyone. It is essential.
This was the nightmare scenario. Summer 2021, a heat dome over BC. More than 600 people died, most inside homes without proper cooling systems.
I'm scared and I'm afraid that could be a repeat.
The World Health Organization says homes should not be above 24 degrees at night. So we want to know just how hot is it getting across Canada?
3 people in the building passed. It was so hot.
To find out, we bought these precision heat and humidity sensors.
This is ready to go.
Last month, we tested them out. Then we installed them. To set them up, our journalists went to 50 apartments in 5 different cities across the country. We will be tracking the temperature all summer.
It gets to the point where, some nights I might only get 4 hours of sleep.
Wow.
The results are already shocking.
Is this for real? Speaking is one thing, but when you actually see the proof of it, it's alarming.
So how do we make our homes and cities safer? It starts with the facts. We'll be gathering the data all summer.
It's like 10 p.m. at night. The temperature is 31 Celsius.
As people endure extreme heat at home.
Hopefully it won't get too much hotter.
Urban Heat, a CBC series coming at you.
CBC Teams has installed temperature and humidity sensors in dozens of homes in several cities, including here in Windsor. We'll have a local story for you on this tomorrow night. Well, they're going humpback crazy in Brazil. Whale lovers and researchers have teamed up to build a database of humpbacks. The project started in 2015 in response to a shortage of scientific data on the species in Brazilian water. Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. And we're on social media too. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.